music is high quality dopamine. It is the best kind of dopamine without the side effects. It's like the high quality sustained release energy pill without the side effects.
Welcome to the Friendly Pharmacy 5 podcast. I'm so excited about today's episode because we're diving into a topic that combines science, creativity, and productivity in a truly unique way. My guest today is Dr. Karen Agro, a trailblazer in blending health and music to transform workplace dynamics. Karen has spent over 30 years building an impressive career, earning her Doctor of Pharmacy and Master of Science degrees, and working in both the pharmacy and pharmaceutical industries. Along the way, she's also spoken on stages across Canada, sharing her insights and expertise in a truly unique way. What might surprise you, though, is that in addition to her expertise as a pharmacist, Karen is also a musician, and she has found a fascinating way to bring her passion for music and her extensive knowledge about health together. How? By teaching others how to increase productivity, motivation, and creativity through the power and the science of music. So, without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Karen Agro to the podcast. Dr. Agro, thank you so much, and welcome to the Friendly Pharmacy 5 podcast. I'm so glad to have you here. How are you today?
I'm well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you. I've been wanting to have you on the channel for quite a while. I've seen your work on Instagram and on LinkedIn. You even presented at the Canadian Pharmacy Association conference a couple of years ago, which is where I first heard of you, actually. But when we chatted recently before this interview, I had asked you, well, how did you manage to connect, healthcare, so your experience as a pharmacist, and music? And the story that you shared with me was just quite profound. And I'm just wondering if you could share that with people today.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a funny way it all happened. One sad, one a bit tragic, but they all came together for a reason, and I think life ends up working that way for us. So before the pandemic, I lost my father due to the consequence of dementia, and I would be playing by his bedside when I finally had to make the decision that he was no longer able to swallow, and we took out all of the tubes and everything, and he was just receiving supportive care. I sat by his bedside for 3 days at University Hospital, London, Ontario, and an acute medicine floor with buzzers going and, people talking and a patient behind the curtain next to us. And I could smell the antiseptic and hear the team, but I couldn't do anything. I was helpless as a health professional. So all I did is play my guitar at his bedside. And Lindsay, out of the darkness, this one day, it was the second day before he died, he just all of a sudden spoke the name of the piece. Like, I thought he wasn't there. And he said the name of the piece, Sounds of Bells. And I was dumbfounded. And that was my first experience where I really saw the potency of music, because my parents put me in music when I was 5 years old, as many listeners probably have their kids in music programs. And I made the decision at the end of high school. I had a choice to go into pharmacy or music. I chose pharmacy with a promise to go back. So that was the first thing that kind of was that aha moment. And then a year later, I fell off of a rock climbing wall in San Francisco. Actually, it was the year before he passed away. And I was climbing with, we were having a family vacation, and I fell free fall 15 feet off of a rock climbing wall. And my arm was twisted behind me. I went into shock. I was 9 hours in critical care because they thought I broke my spine. So with those two things coming together and, lying on that climbing floor, all I thought, Lindsay, was not about my job and not about my profession. It was, can I actually ever play the guitar again? So that, and then my father passed away the following year, really brought it back to me. And now looking at how I can combine health and music, not looking at two separate circles, but overlapping circles, and finding the magic where they overlap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so I'm really excited to talk about this topic because there is science behind music, right? And so as a pharmacist, you've studied the science of healthcare, right? And now you're using that I guess know-how and branching into the area of music and seeing how music affects not only our mental health, but our productivity and, how we perform even at work. And we're going to talk about that today. What did your work look like prior to all of this? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Very probably typical to a lot of your listeners and viewers. I was running a consulting company. I still do to the pharmaceutical industry. So I maintain my pharmacist license by working one evening a week at the drugstore. So I see patients. And then for the last 28 years, since I graduated from the PharmD program at U of T and then did my master's in health research methodology at McMaster, I've been consulting to pharma, doing mainly three things: healthcare communications. So patient-directed tools, healthcare professional education. So speaking on anything from, asthma to COPD to chronic migraine at conferences, and then also assisting on drug plan design and making recommendations for private drug plans. So that was like really, really sciencey. And then my music was kind of over here. And I guess my main message to everyone listening today is that music is the ultimate motivation tool and productivity tool that you can use, but we dismiss it because we think of it as something that's woo woo, right? Like just like we thought back in the 60s and 70s, meditation or mindfulness was seen as something that was kind of on the fringe. But now we know the science behind music. It's almost like a form of medicine. And it's one of the most underutilized tools that we have at our fingertips, especially in the workplace and in our lives, to bring back joy, to shift our mood, and to motivate us to bring our better selves to our day.
Mhm. And I want to talk more about how music can help us with productivity. But going back to that story about your father and how he remembered the name of the song that you were playing, and clearly that spoke to something in him. I remember when my grandmother actually had dementia, and she was a very beautiful organ player. She played the piano and the organ. And very late, in the very late stages of dementia, they put her in front of the organ just to see if she would play. And she played. She could not really recognize any of her family members. She could not, remember even what happened the day before. But she sat down at that organ and she just played like it, she had played in her best days, right?
That is so powerful. Like it, because music affects more parts of our brain than any other stimulus. And it can reach us like unfiltered, like it's a direct path. So no wonder she responded like that, because those neural circuits are already primed and ready. So
Mm.
she was able to bring that back. It reaches us beyond conscious thought.
Yeah,
It
and I
even lights up the same parts of our brain as like cocaine and chocolate. Like it works so fast. And that's, one of the reasons.
so is there like a dopamine association as well with music?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've kind of come up with this thing called codes. Music codes our brain. So it affects cortisol. Well, it's not really in our brain, but you know what I mean, in our system.
Hmm.
Oxytocin. So cortisol is the stress hormone.
Yeah.
Oxytocin being the love hormone. D being dopamine. E being endorphins, and S being serotonin.
Mm.
And I mean, it's music is high quality dopamine. It is the best kind of dopamine without the side effects. It's like the high quality sustained release energy pill without the side effects.
That's a great explanation. And so I know that you go to workplaces and you help companies understand more about how to use music in terms of productivity. And I know that you've talked about short, even music breaks or something like that. Can you explain how that works? I read that you had written that everything we've learned about productivity is wrong. So can you elaborate on that a little bit and help explain that? Because I think we'd all like to be a bit more productive and more focused in today's day and age, right?
I completely, yes. I think it's called the productivity myth. I mean, we have been taught that it's productivity at all costs. But actually we need to create the right environment so that we can get the best out of ourselves and our team. And I call it the productivity myth because I say what ends up happening is we push, 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 push. And now we see so many people in burnout or facing high stress. And we can't solve burnout with a bonus check at the end of the year, or a bubble bath, or some sort of financial means. Because what we really, like, that's important and it's helpful, but what people really need is quick wins and things they can do every day to refuel themselves, to reduce their stress, rather than waiting at the end of the year, right? We can't wait for that. So where music comes in is it can be like that intervention that you can do every day at the workplace, in your home, to help bring down your stress levels and to increase your motivation so that you can bring yourself best self forward. And like, I have to ask, like, when you're under stress, there's naturally certain things we do, right? And I kind of break it into three categories. We numb, right? We want to kind of turn off that part of our brain to make us feel better, to make that pain go away. We hustle, or we become apathetic. So numbing ends up becoming inefficient. We become inefficient in our day. So what's a typical way we numb? How would you numb? How would you see people numbing? Scrolling social media,
Oh, yes.
going out drinking with their friends. And as it turns out, social media and, going back to devices to kind of turn your brain off and give yourself a break during the day is absolutely the worst thing you can do,
Hmm.
because studies have shown that it actually takes almost 20 minutes to get back on task after you've been checking your phone or your social media or your messages, because your brain just goes too far over there and it takes that much to get back on task. We hustle, right? I gave a seminar this week to a corporate group, and I asked the team, how many of you desk dine? You sit at your desk while eating your lunch and trying to work at the same time, and all of them raise their hand, right? But
Very
again,
common.
you're not giving yourself a pause, so you end up being exhausted. So the consequence of pushing through is exhaustion. And then the last is we become apathetic. When we become so overwhelmed with the stress of our day, we tend to throw up our hands. And there was this interesting study done that they gave people either a cognitively demanding task or a less cognitively demanding task. The study was done in Europe, and the groups were given a choice. Right away at the end of the study, they could receive 35 euros or wait 2 months after the study and receive 50 euros. Now, both are great prizes, but as it turns out, the people who had the more cognitively demanding tasks, they were more likely to take the lesser reward and not wait the 2 months, versus the people who had the less cognitively demanding task. They were more likely to take the higher reward 2 months later. So the point is that we tend to fall into bad decision making because we're exhausted, because we become apathetic. And the worry I have for anyone listening on the podcast who are in the health professions, or where precision and accuracy is so important, there's obviously a risk to patient safety, a risk to whatever you're doing. There's a consequence to that.
Yeah, there definitely is. And I think it's become quite rampant where we constantly just feel this mental overload, right?
Mhm.
Why is it that so many people, so I mean, it's obvious that in healthcare, burnout is a massive problem. But it's not only, associated to healthcare. There are a lot of different industries where people are just generally feeling very burnt out. Why do you think this is?
I liken it to cognitive overload.
Right.
If you think of your brain like a sketch pad, and every knowledge interaction that you're having, you are basically putting something on that sketch pad. But eventually it gets full, and something has to fall off. Like, how many times have you been backing up the car and don't you intuitively either turn down the radio
Yeah.
or roll down the window, because your brain can only handle so much.
Mhm.
And the situation in the workplace is our braking system was designed at the time of the Industrial Revolution, when the output of our work was from our bodies, not our brains. So that notion of a 30-minute lunch or two 15-minute breaks came from a time hundreds of years ago. But now we're in a knowledge economy where the output of our work is from our brains, not our bodies. So our brains are working overtime. Our brains are built for a series of sprints, not a marathon. And then that's where music can come in. And that's where I talk about micro breaks, because micro breaks are basically short breaks taken whenever you need to, usually under 5 minutes. So from seconds to minutes. And they've been shown if people who are allowed to microbreak, and this literature actually came out in the psychology field early in the pandemic, was when the first landmark paper was published. And they've been shown to, microbreaks have been shown to reduce end of work fatigue and increase productivity. And people come back to work more refreshed. So a micro break is, well, I have a cup here. We could do the little demonstration.
Yes, sure.
So imagine your day like this cup, right? And actually, I'll grab my coffee cup. Imagine your day like this cup, and every knowledge interaction you have is like adding a new liquid to the cup. So when you start off your day, you come to work with some coffee in your cup. But then, have an unexpected turn of events. Whatever you were supposed to start your day with didn't happen. So then you add some milk to the cup. And then after you've added the milk to the cup, something else happened. An employee called in sick, and now you've totally derailed your day. So now you're adding some orange juice to the cup. And then you wanted to actually sit down and do the work that you wanted to, and then you had to now put out a new workplace fire. So you add some tea to the cup. Well, now my cup is no longer filled with something I want to drink. It's filled with something I don't want to drink.
Right.
So what a micro break is emptying that cup out and grabbing a fresh cup to start your day and start your whatever you were supposed to start with a fresh brain. And that's all it is. It's kind of wiping the slate clean so that you can think more clearly. So that's basically what a micro break is. And you can do it with mindfulness, movement, or music.
And obviously, I would guess that you would do your micro breaks with music.
Yes. So I recommend music micro breaks because music is one of the most overlooked tools that we have. It's accessible. Like, why music, right? It's accessible. You can do it anywhere, anytime. What's the typical duration of a song? Like when you listen to a song on the
3 or
radio?
4 minutes.
3 to 4 minutes, exactly. And that fits exactly into the space of a micro break.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing about music is it's universal.
Mm-hmm.
What we now know is music can basically connect with a variety of emotions. It can shift our mood in less than 10 minutes. There was a music as medicine study done in over 7,000 people. And they found the dose of music, just like your coffee to wake you up in the morning and maybe a glass of wine to relax in the evening. We now know the dose of music that can shift our mood. So we know happy music, the onset's 5 minutes or less, and the optimal listening duration is around 9 minutes. And the other thing about music too is there was this interesting study done in two countries, China and the US, and they gave them all these music samples, thousands of music samples, and people were able to boil down to 13 identifiable mood states, irrespective of the culture that the music came from. So we've grown up with music, right? Your children probably listen to music. You probably listened to music as a child. It basically forms the soundtrack of our life. And music allows you to dial up any emotion you might need. Because let's face it, when you show up to work, or you're put into a high stress situation, maybe it's a meeting with your boss, or a difficult call you're going to have with a colleague, and you don't feel like it. Many times we don't feel like showing up for these things. A dose of music can actually shift you into that mood so that you can face whatever you're going to face. I mean, we can do a little demonstration right now to show you how quickly
yes,
music
absolutely
works.
I would love it.
See if I can tune this guitar. Okay, so I'm going to invite you and all our listeners to think of something that's really a happy thought. And I invite you, if you want to, if you're listening, to close your eyes. And I want you to imagine, who were you with? What did it smell like? What did it sound like? What did it feel like? And picture that in your mind. It could have been the birth of a child, a first kiss. It could have been getting a new pet. Just think about that magic, happy thought and encapsulate it in your mind. And we're just going to listen to some music together. Okay. Open your eyes. Without saying anything else, tell me one feeling you had in listening to that music. Anything. Any word.
Joy.
Joy. Okay. Anything else?
I would say I felt very peaceful.
Peaceful. Exactly.
Mm,
Yes. So when I've done this with groups, I hear everything from I went from happy to you ruined my happy moment
mm.
to everything in between, like peaceful, joy, melancholy, right? It connected you to emotion that you weren't thinking at the time. And that's the beauty of music is it works so fast. So I proved to you in less than 30 seconds with a piece of music you've never heard before that I could shift your mood. And in fact, this piece was actually called Color Sepia. And when I
Mm.
think of sepia, like what do you think of sepia as like brown tones,
Yeah.
old? So I think of like an old person going through old photographs, and perhaps reminiscing. So that's the thing is the reality of our day can shift. Requires us to shift the energy we bring forward, and music can do that. Whether you're in the car, at work, in your office with your headphones on, it only takes a few minutes.
Yeah, I think I read one of your posts recently or something where you were mentioning um, the possibility of people using music when you're starting a meeting. So everyone's coming into the meeting room and you could just have some nice music playing and it's much, much more welcoming. Or during a brainstorming session, often, the whole room falls silent when we're supposed to be brainstorming. And there's so much pressure and your mind just goes blank because it's like, oh my goodness. Like, so if you just have some calm music or something in the background, that can really make a difference. Is that right?
Absolutely. There was a study done in academia where they gave school age children the chance to listen to self-selected music before class or not. And the group that was able to listen to the music, and it was like a short period of time, like during a school break between classes, actually showed greater motivation, productivity, and possibly a shift in learning outcomes. So what we know is even if you're starting a meeting, and what do we do when we walk into a meeting room? People are shuffling around and grabbing a coffee, and there's sort of chit chat and whatnot. If you had music playing, it automatically connects people. Similarly, great icebreaker for especially for groups who don't know each other. Putting on a couple tracks and doing a guess this song. And yes, similarly, when we're thinking about music during brainstorming sessions, there is good evidence to say that music, especially ambient music, so without lyrics or more instrumental music, stimulates the brain to think differently so that we can open ourselves to creative thought. And I have to say, like when we think about music, especially in the workplace, there's two camps. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, I did an Instagram poll. My daughter thought it was cringeworthy, but I did this poll online. I did it on LinkedIn as well. And I asked people, I said, which camp are you in? Are you someone who can listen to music when you're working, especially cognitively demanding tasks on your computer, or are you not? So, Lindsay, what are you? Can you listen to music when you're working or not?
I think it depends on the type of work. So I would say that if I'm in the pharmacy, I'm probably not listening to music. If I'm doing creative work, I would really appreciate a little bit of music, kind of like what you just played there.
Exactly. So, and I've seen there's basically two camps. Some people will say I absolutely cannot listen to music, and other people will say yes or it depends. And I'm like you. I'm either in the no or it depends. Cognitively demanding work. We know that music with lyrics is probably, and especially music we know with lyrics, is probably not the good thing to listen to because it competes with the narrative in our brain. So generally the hierarchy is if you can listen to music while you're working, music without lyrics or instrumental music, then the next best would be music with lyrics, and then the worst is music with lyrics, because then you're thinking about, your brain is taken into a different direction. But we know, for example, video game music is designed specifically to keep you in the game. to keep you playing.
Right.
So that's why it depends on the activity. Like if you're about to do some house cleaning, put on a great playlist to get you going, because maybe it's not as cognitively demanding, but physically it will motivate you. A friend of mine's a school teacher, and during the pandemic, she was so bummed out. Going into the classroom, it was quite depressing. And she said, I took your advice, Karen. I put on some really energetic music, and the kids came in and they were so, they were dancing around. So it does depend on what kind of task you're doing, but definitely before a meeting or before engaging activity, 10 minutes of music or 5 minutes of music can stimulate you into a different headspace so that you can be more motivated and productive.
And I'm wondering also from a mental health standpoint. So, a lot of people are dealing with mental health issues. Burnout doesn't help with that, right? Have you seen any studies on depression or other mental health issues that where music can be helpful?
Absolutely. Yes. We know that music can almost act like your personal therapy. And I kind of tie it to the science of how music works.
Hmm.
So the analogy I like to draw is of a car in a snowstorm. So I'm here in Southern Ontario right now and it is snowing. And for those of you who are listening, either you've had a car that's gotten stuck in the mud or stuck in snow. And what's the natural reaction you do when your car gets stuck? What do you do, Lindsay? Like, I know what I do.
Well, I panic and I go in reverse or try to just get out of there. Yeah.
Exactly, right? I hit the gas, and what ends up happening, we keep spinning. And then
Hmm.
what ends up happening when we spin?
You get
We don't
further
go
into the
anywhere.
problem. Hmm.
Get further into the problem. Now, a clinical depression, I'm not talking about music that would, obviously music does help with mental health issues for sure, but my example of my car is talking about a typically stressful situation you might incur in your day. So instead of spinning your wheels, which all it's going to do is, get the windshield wipers going and the exhaust is going to be spewing out the back. What do we need to do is we need to stop, and we need to assess and figure out what we need. So maybe we need a first gear. Music can, if I take two tuning forks and I strike one tuning fork, the other tuning fork, if they're of the same frequency, the other tuning fork will start to vibrate without even touching. So that's what I think of the first gear. It powers us out of the situation. It takes you along for the ride. Similarly, how many times have you been driving in the car and a song you love comes on the radio, right? In an instant, you're rolling down the windows and singing because it takes you somewhere. So that's kind of the first gear. Then sometimes music can act as a wedge under our tire. So when you're stuck, maybe you don't need the first gear, like the happy music that can shift your mood in under 10 minutes. Maybe you need to stick a wedge under your tire to free yourself, to release yourself from the situation you're in. So if you're feeling down, sometimes listening to sad music. Now, I don't want the music to take you even further down, but sad music can actually help you release those emotions so that you can come back with clarity. So when I was driving back and forth from here near Burlington, Ontario to London, Ontario, when my father was in the hospital, I would intuitively listen to sad music. I would cry down the 401. I was so tearful I could barely see out the windshield. But then slowly I would increase the melody or the tunes to put me into a different headspace. And I was doing that naturally before I even understood how that works. And music therapists oftentimes use that. They'll meet the client at the mood that they're in. And sometimes having a release of emotions allows us to have better clarity after that so that we can face whatever we're facing. So that's the second way it works, as a wedge under our tires. And then lastly, music can act as a tow. Sometimes we just need to release and let the tow truck pull the car out of the snow, right?
Hmm.
And that's where rhythm really comes in. Rhythm, we have a normal rhythm in our body, right? It's our heart,
Hmm.
and it beats at typically about 60 beats per minute. So music can take a racing heart and slow it down, because we entrain with the beat. So when I was a kid, I'm old, so when I was a kid, my parents used to have one of those big speakers, with the woofer and the tweeter, and I would lie on the floor and feel the beat of the music. If you take a bunch of metronomes and they're all going at different rates, or clocks on a wall, once they share a surface, they will start to go in sync with each other. Same thing happens to us with our bodies, with the music. So we know music can act like an interface to our physiology. It can cause Calming music can cause a racing heart to come down. So if down to about 60 beats per minute, that's why there's playlists for about 60 beats per minute, because it allows your body to synchronize with the rhythm. Similarly, we know that music at about 140 or 150 beats per minute can rev us up. We know that music can actually increase our exercise endurance by up to 15% by doing nothing other than the music. They've done treadmill studies where they've normalized all other variables, and the music could increase exercise endurance by 15%. So to your question about medical conditions, absolutely, whether it's through altering our neurochemistry, the codes I talked about earlier, reducing our cortisol, raising our dopamine, or physically actually in training with our heart to bring a racing heart down, or to lift a slower heart rate up, to put us in a better space. And a friend of mine, a couple of my colleagues who are in family medicine have said, Karen, there's a lot of people, a lot of our patients don't want to go to therapy. They're not prepared to talk to anyone. If you could teach them and we could convey how music can help them, it can act as their personal therapy intervention. And perhaps they still would like to go to therapy, or perhaps need that intervention. But music is something they can do in the privacy of their car, their home, their office, wherever it may be. It's super accessible.
That's a great point. I was just thinking, do you have any insights on, I've heard of like these delta waves, like different frequencies of music. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I've seen some information. There's a lot of, if you go on the internet and Google it or throw it in Instagram, you're going to see a lot of information on that. I have to be honest, I haven't spent a lot of time in looking at that literature. I focused more around the physics, whether it's rhythmic entrainment, like my metronome example, or sympathetic resonance, or the neurochemistry. But there probably is evidence out there for that. I just haven't spent as much of my time in that body of research. I think just being a pharmacist, I spend more of my time in the physics and neurochemistry. But yeah, it's certainly something people are talking about online.
Yeah, no, I was just curious because I stumbled upon the delta wave, I think, on my Spotify or something, and I actually found I listen to it sometimes at night when I just want to be calm, and it does have kind of a calming effect when you just want quiet, but you kind of need something just to kind of help you just calm down, right? But I haven't read about it either, so I don't know.
But I have to say, though, on that point, there is evidence for various forms of music, especially in that situation. So there was a study done on a track called Weightless. So if you're watching or listening to this podcast, there's a track called Weightless. If you go online, I think it's had like 50 million views already. There's like a short version, and then there's like an 8-hour version. They studied it compared to massage, putting biomarkers on people. So they looked at heart rate and like very objective measures, various objective outcomes. And they found that although people love the massage, that the Weightless track was actually more relaxing on objective biofeedback markers compared to massage.
Wow.
And so, yes, and so much so that if you Google Weightless, it says it's the most relaxing track ever. Now, I'm not into superlatives and like extremes like that, but they found that compared to massage, it reduced anxiety by up to 65%. So every time I talk about Weightless, the number of people who either have come back to one of my sessions or have connected with me afterwards said, I use it. I've used it on my children. It's so relaxing. They say you shouldn't listen to it while driving a car.
Wow. Okay. Well, we'll have to look into that.
So if you're listening, check it out. And what we know, so talking about various waves and stuff. What we know with Weightless and from sound therapy, because I completed my diploma in sound therapy through the British Academy during my journey into learning all this, because being evidence based, I'm like, where is all this stuff coming from? And during my training, what we learned, and it's true, is low tones make us safe.
Mm.
And even if you listen to someone's voice, right? If they're talking calmly and in a lower tone, you're more likely to feel safe. And high tones, high pitched tones, make us feel more anxious. And random tones actually add to the safety as well. So if you listen to this track Weightless, you'll notice there's a lot of low tones sprinkled with various chimes and random sounds, and it brings down your nervous system so that you hit a more relaxed state. It's very interesting.
Yeah, and I imagine this could help people with insomnia as well, people who are having trouble sleeping for various issues, right, due to stress or physiological issues as well. I'm sure there's some evidence for music and insomnia.
Oh, definitely, definitely. There's a lot of information out there around helping with sleep, relaxation, and that music as medicine study I referred to earlier. Although they said, we know the dose of happy music, but we also know that music can bring on feelings of relaxation, release sadness, and for those of people who can listen to music while they work, increase focus. So, and that was done in over 7,000 participants.
Mm.
So yeah, the optimal listening duration was about 13 minutes, but the onset of effect for many of these outcomes was much earlier, especially for happy music, because it tends to have a very quick hit to our brains and to our physiology.
Hmm. That's fascinating. Karen,
Mhm.
I want people to know how they can reach out to you. I know that you do presentations. You work with a lot of corporations. There's some things that you offer. So I want to talk about that. But after we talk about that, could you play us a little bit more music before we go? That's
Okay,
impromptu. We didn't plan that, but
we
it's
didn't
so
plan that.
it was so beautiful. It was so beautiful.
Aw,
Just if you could give us a little micro break or something, I think
a
people.
little micro break right now.
Sure, go ahead. I mean,
Well,
we would like
I
your playlist, Karen. We would
or I
like.
can take it out. I can take us out with music. Well, I must admit there are a lot of playlists out there, obviously on Spotify and the various platforms. I talk about creating a serotonin playlist,
Okay.
uh, a bunch of pieces that can really raise your serotonin and make you feel happy. Because let's face it, we've always been told to have an emergency kit for cuts and scrapes, but what about for the wounds you can't see,
Mm.
right? And that's where having an emotional safety kit that's at your ready, whether it's calling a friend, journaling, mindfulness, going for a walk, and having a serotonin playlist. And to your point around the micro breaks, I have a bunch of tools on my website. It's a growing list of tools on my karenagro.com. But the one thing I really want people to take away from this session is music is not woo woo. It's science backed. And one of the simplest ways you can use music strategically right now is through micro breaks. So it's not just the music you listen to in the elevator going to work or in the shopping mall. It's consciously listening, even for 2 to 3 minutes, can have a great impact on your mental, physical, and emotional health, and having that at the ready whenever you need to. Like, let's think about it. Your car is your instant little spa, right? You're private. You can listen to usually whatever you want. You're trapped in there anyway, whether it's driving to work or traffic. Yet you can use that time as a self-care moment. So music enhanced or music infused micro breaks are such a great way. And you can layer that. You can do that while you're out for a walk with a dog, or while you're doing something that doesn't require as much cognitive work, so that you can still brushing your teeth in the morning. A typical song is 2 to 3 minutes, and we're supposed to brush our teeth for 2 minutes.
Mhm.
But how many of us actually do that? So you can do a micro break while brushing your teeth, layering something you're already doing to set the mood for your day. Put that song on for 2 minutes, and there you go. You've set your intention for the day. Even if you can't say meditate or journaling isn't your thing, music is, it gives you, allows you to have the same benefits and so much more.
Yeah, and I think these micro breaks are something that are so practical. I mean, for pharmacists, sometimes it's hard even to go for a bathroom break, but that's changing, I think, and the culture has to change, right? And so being able to incorporate breaks, not going to your phone right away when you're on a break, stopping that scroll, right? And giving yourself a reset in that way, I think is something that is incredibly underutilized. A lot of people have tried to throw a lot of tools at burnout, but you're the first one who I've heard talk about music for this. Um,
Yes, it's so underutilized, and maybe it's just like I work in the pharmacy. I know how busy it is. I know how hard it is, but maybe it's taking a walk around the dispensary, even just a
sure.
lap. Put your headphones on, say, guys, I just need 2 minutes. The world's not going to fall apart, yet you're going to come back more refreshed and better able to do your job.
Yeah.
When you're giving yourself that time, even if it's just a 2 minute or 30-second break, just put your head out the door, look at the sun, breathe in, listen to the sounds
Yeah.
around you. It doesn't even have to be music, just to tune in, so that when you come back, you're able to have a more refreshed approach.
Well, this has been wonderful, Karen. Thank you so much for sharing all of these insights with us. I hope that people can really take away the positive impact that music can really have on us. I think for a lot of us, it's something that maybe we learned an instrument when we were younger and we know our favorite songs, but it's not something that people necessarily think of as something that can be therapeutic and could be an incredible tool even in the workplace. And you've really shone a light on that today. So I want you to thank you for that. I also want people to know how they can find you and reach out to you. What are you up to? So you work as a pharmacist, but what else are you doing to kind of spread the word about how music can be utilized?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Thank you. So I do keynotes. So I've spoken at various conferences. I've spoken for, sorry, my guitar's resonating because it's catching my voice. Very even like PDW for the pharmacy students. Spoke corporately. I just did a retreat for a group of CEOs last week. So it's either 1 hour keynotes or half day workshops or 2 hour workshops. And like I said, I also have a number of tools on my website. So if you're looking for resources, you can either go to karenagro.com, or if you're on social media, I'm on LinkedIn as Karen Agro, and then any other social media platform, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, and even TikTok, it's Karen Agro Guitar. So you can just check me out, and I try and post as many educational and informational videos as possible, so that people have tools that they can use in their day to help music have an impact on their lives.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you so much. And we will put all of those links so you can find Karen in the description of this video. Let us know what you learned today from Karen. Maybe let us know in the comments how you relax or what kind of music helps you to get that micro break in, and try to get some micro breaks in this week if you've listened to the interview thus far. Karen, I'm going to let you play us out, and I'm just going to sit back and
Okay.
enjoy.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming on the podcast, Karen. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. I admire your work. From the day I met you at that CPHA conference, I was like, wow, I need to learn more about her
Wow.
and what she's doing. So thank you for all the work that you do, for all your viewers and for those who are learning about what you do. I mean, you've got this great following, and I'm just I'm amazed and so admire what you do. So thank you so much.
Oh, thanks. It's a privilege.